Imagine the last moment of peace before everything changes forever. A quiet Sunday morning, the smell of coffee and breakfast, the sound of laughter and church bells. Young men writing letters home, never knowing those letters will never be sent. The sun rises gently over a harbor filled with the most powerful warships on earth, sleeping giants of steel, painted gray against the blue Hawaiian water. In just 90 minutes, that peaceful harbor will become a graveyard. Over 2,400 Americans will die, most before they even understand what's happening. 8 battleships will be sunk or crippled, and a nation that had desperately clung to peace will be thrust into the most devastating war in human history. But here, in this moment, on this quiet Sunday morning, no one knows. No one imagines that far above the Pacific Ocean, an armada of death is closing in. That 353 Japanese aircraft are minutes away. That in one sudden, brutal hour, the world will change forever. December 7th, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii. This is Pearl Harbor, the day that awoke a giant. To understand Pearl Harbor, we must first understand how America and Japan arrived at this moment, and why, on that Sunday morning, war became inevitable. The relationship between the United States and Japan had been deteriorating for years. In the 1930s, Japan embarked on a campaign of territorial expansion across Asia. Their military, increasingly powerful and aggressive, saw empire building as Japan's destiny. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria. The world protested but did little. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. Cities were bombed. Millions of civilians died. The rape of Nanking shocked the world with its brutality. America, watching from across the Pacific, grew increasingly alarmed. The United States had interests in Asia, the Philippines, trade with China, the principle of the open-door policy. Japan's expansion threatened all of it. President Franklin D. Roosevelt began imposing economic sanctions on Japan. Scrap metal, aviation fuel, eventually oil. America cut off the resources Japan needed to fuel its war machine. By 1941, Japan faced a critical choice: back down and abandon its empire, or go to war to secure the resources it needed. The Japanese military chose war, but they knew that America's industrial power was overwhelming. In a prolonged conflict, Japan would lose. Their only hope was a knockout blow, a surprise attack so devastating that America would be forced to negotiate rather than fight. The man tasked with planning this attack was Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Yamamoto was brilliant, experienced, and, ironically, opposed to war with America. He had studied at Harvard, served as a naval attaché in Washington. He knew America's strength. He warned his superiors, "I can run wild for 6 months to a year. After that, I have no confidence." But when ordered to plan the attack, he did so with ruthless efficiency. His target, the U.S. Pacific Fleet, anchored at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. His plan, a surprise carrier strike, launched from the north, before war was even declared. If successful, it would cripple America's ability to interfere with Japan's expansion for months, maybe years. Throughout 1941, Japanese pilots trained in secret. They practiced low-altitude torpedo runs over Kagoshima Bay, which resembled Pearl Harbor. They studied maps, photos, ship positions. On November 26, 1941, the strike force departed Japan. 6 aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, escorted by battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines. Over 400 aircraft, 3,500 men. They sailed north, into the cold, empty waters of the North Pacific, maintaining strict radio silence. If spotted, the mission would be aborted. But they were never spotted. The fleet approached Hawaii from the north, the direction Americans least expected. Rough seas and cloudy weather provided cover. By December 6th, they were 230 miles north of Oahu. The attack was set for dawn, December 7th. Meanwhile, in Washington, tensions were rising. American cryptanalysts had broken Japan's diplomatic codes. They knew negotiations were breaking down. War seemed imminent, but where would Japan strike? The Philippines? Malaysia? No one thought Hawaii. Pearl Harbor was considered too far, too well defended, too risky. On the evening of December 6th, President Roosevelt read the latest intercept, Japan's final message breaking off negotiations. He turned to his aide and said, "This means war." But even he didn't know that the first blow would fall at Pearl Harbor. December 7, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii. The sun rises gently over Pearl Harbor. It's a beautiful day. The sky is clear. The temperature is mild. Perfect weather for a lazy Sunday. Sailors eat breakfast, church bells ring, and the calm blue water reflects the peaceful sky. On Ford Island, in the center of the harbor, the Navy band prepares for the morning flag-raising ceremony. At 8 a.m., the national anthem will play, and the flag will be raised on every ship. Aboard the battleships moored along Battleship Row, the western side of Ford Island, sailors wake slowly. Sunday is a day of rest. Many sleep in. Others eat breakfast in the mess halls, write letters, or prepare for shore leave. Battleship Row is an impressive sight. 7 battleships, moored in pairs. Nevada, alone, Arizona and Vestal, a repair ship, Tennessee and West Virginia, Maryland and Oklahoma, and California. Nearby, the battleship Pennsylvania sits in dry dock, undergoing maintenance. These are the pride of the Pacific Fleet. Massive ships, bristling with guns, symbols of American naval power. But on this Sunday morning, they are sitting ducks. Most of their watertight doors are open for ventilation. Their anti-aircraft ammunition is locked away. Their crews are at minimal readiness. No one imagines that in just a few minutes, their world will be engulfed in fire. At nearby airfields, Hickam, Wheeler, Bellows, American aircraft sit wingtip to wingtip, neatly lined up to prevent sabotage. But this makes them perfect targets for an air attack. No one expects an air attack. The only radar station on Oahu is operating on a training schedule. At 7:02 a.m., 2 young operators detect a large group of aircraft approaching from the north, over 50 miles away. They report it, but the officer on duty assumes it's a group of American B-17 bombers due to arrive from California that morning. "Don't worry about it," he says. The radar operators go to breakfast. Far above the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of Japanese aircraft slice through the clouds, bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters, each one carrying death beneath its wings. Commander Mitsuo Fukuda leads the first wave, 183 aircraft. Torpedo bombers, dive bombers, high-level bombers, and Zero fighters. Their mission has been prepared for months. Their orders are clear: cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet before it can ever rise against the Japanese Empire. At 7:48 a.m., the silence breaks.
7:48 morgens.
Commander Fukuda radios the attack signal: Tora, 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 Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. The code word means, total surprise achieved. The first wave descends like a swarm of steel hawks. Torpedo bombers scream low over the water, heading straight for the battleships moored along Battleship Row. These are Nakajima B-5N Kate bombers, carrying modified aerial torpedoes designed to run in shallow water. Pearl Harbor is only 40 feet deep. Normal torpedoes would bury themselves in the mud. But the Japanese have solved this problem. Dive bombers plummet from the sky with a terrible whistle, releasing bombs that shake the earth and sea. Zero fighters strafe anything that moves: ships, airfields, buildings, people. The Americans are caught completely off guard. First, many think it's a drill. Some even admire the realism of the pyrotechnics. Then they see the red circles, the rising sun insignia on the wings. This is real. Battleship Row. The battleship Oklahoma is struck by multiple torpedoes on her port side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Massive holes are torn in her hull. Water floods in. Within minutes, she begins to capsize. Men scramble to escape. Some make it to the deck and dive overboard. Others are trapped below as the ship rolls over. Oklahoma capsizes completely, her hull now facing the sky. Inside, hundreds of men are trapped in darkness, in air pockets, pounding on the metal, screaming for help. Rescue crews will hear them for days. Some will be cut out. Many will not.
432 men die aboard Oklahoma.
The battleship West Virginia takes 6 or 7 torpedoes and 2 bombs. Her captain, Mervyn Benyon, is mortally wounded by shrapnel from a bomb that hits nearby Tennessee. He refuses to leave his post, directing damage control efforts until he dies. Doris Miller, a black mess attendant with no combat training, carries the wounded captain to safety, then mans an anti-aircraft gun, shooting at Japanese planes until ordered to abandon ship. Miller will later become the first African American to receive the Navy Cross. West Virginia settles upright into the mud, her upper decks still above water. Damage control efforts prevent her from capsizing. She will be raised and returned to service. The battleship California takes 2 torpedoes and a bomb. She floods slowly. Her crew fights to save her, but she eventually settles into the mud. Like West Virginia, she will be raised and repaired. The battleship Nevada, moored alone at the northern end of Battleship Row, is struck by 1 torpedo and several bombs. But Nevada's engineering crew manages to get her underway, the only battleship to do so during the attack. She begins steaming toward the harbor entrance, trying to escape to the open sea. The Japanese pilots see this and concentrate their attacks on her. If Nevada sinks in the narrow channel, she'll block the harbor entrance for months. Bombs rain down on Nevada. Fires rage. But her captain, realizing the danger, deliberately beaches her near Hospital Point to avoid blocking the channel. Nevada's attempt to escape is one of the most heroic moments of the battle.
7:55 morgens.
The battleship Arizona takes a direct hit. A 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb, dropped from 10,000 feet, strikes near her forward turrets. The bomb penetrates the deck and detonates in or near the forward ammunition magazines. A massive explosion tears through her forward magazines. In a single flash of light and fire, more than 1,000 men are killed. The explosion is so violent that it lifts the entire bow of the ship out of the water. The forward turrets, each weighing hundreds of tons, are blown into the air. Flames shoot hundreds of feet into the sky. The concussion is felt across the harbor. Men on nearby ships are knocked off their feet. The ship becomes a burning tomb. Arizona sinks in less than 9 minutes, settling into the mud, her superstructure collapsing into the flames. 1,177 men die aboard Arizona, nearly half of all American deaths at Pearl Harbor. Many are killed instantly in the explosion. Others are trapped below, drowned, or burned alive. Bodies are never recovered. To this day, Arizona remains on the harbor floor, a tomb and a memorial. Oil from her ruptured fuel tanks continues to leak, black tears that rise to the surface, a reminder of the men still entombed within. Chaos spreads across the harbor. Smoke blackens the sky. Oil burns on the water, turning the surface into a sea of flames. Men dive overboard, swimming through burning oil. Some make it to shore, others don't. The water itself is a nightmare, thick black smoke, choking fumes, scalding heat. Ships list, sink, or burn where they sit. The repair ship Vestal, moored alongside Arizona, is damaged by the explosion. Her captain orders the ship cut loose and beached to prevent her from sinking. The battleship Tennessee, moored inboard of West Virginia, is trapped. Burning oil from Arizona drifts toward her. Her crew fights fires and floods, unable to move. The battleship Maryland, moored inboard of Oklahoma, is shielded from torpedoes by Oklahoma's hull. She takes 2 bomb hits but suffers relatively light damage. Anti-aircraft guns struggle to fire back, their crews caught completely off guard. At first, ammunition is locked away. Gun crews scramble to break open lockers, pass shells by hand, load guns that haven't been manned in peacetime. But as the shock wears off, the Americans fight back with increasing intensity. Every gun that can be manned is firing, even small arms. Sailors shoot rifles and pistols at aircraft, knowing it's futile but needing to do something. The volume of anti-aircraft fire grows. Tracers arc across the sky. Some Japanese planes are hit, trailing smoke, crashing into the water or the hills. The airfields. Above them, Japanese Zero fighters strafe airfields and bases, destroying planes before they can take off. At Hickam Field, adjacent to Pearl Harbor, American bombers and fighters are lined up in neat rows, perfect targets. Zeros swoop down, machine guns blazing. Aircraft explode. Fuel tanks rupture. Men run for cover. At Wheeler Field, in the center of Oahu, it's the same story. Planes destroyed on the ground. Hangars in flames. A few American pilots manage to take off. Second Lieutenants George Welch and Kenneth Taylor race to Haleiwa Airfield, where a few P-40 fighters are kept. They take off and engage the Japanese, shooting down several aircraft. Their bravery is exceptional, but they are vastly outnumbered. Hangars explode. Pilots run for cover. The island is transformed from paradise to battlefield.
9:15 Uhr morgens.
The second wave arrives. 167 more aircraft, dive bombers and fighters, led by Lieutenant Commander Shigekazu Shimazaki. The torpedo bombers are absent from this wave. Their job is done. More bombs, more fire, more destruction. But the Americans are now fully alert. Anti-aircraft fire is intense. The second wave faces much heavier resistance. Japanese pilots find it harder to press home their attacks. More aircraft are shot down. The second wave focuses on ships that escaped the first attack on airfields and on port facilities. The destroyer Shaw, in a floating dry dock, is hit by bombs. Her forward magazines explode in a spectacular fireball, one of the most iconic images of the attack. The destroyer Cassin and Downs, in dry dock with Pennsylvania, are bombed and burned fiercely. But the focus is no longer on battleships. Most are already sinking or burning. The attack lasts less than 2 hours, but it feels like an eternity to the men fighting for their lives. At 9:45 a.m., the last Japanese planes depart, heading back to their carriers. When the smoke finally begins to clear, the scale of the devastation becomes evident. Pearl Harbor is a scene of apocalyptic destruction. 8 battleships damaged or destroyed. Arizona, sunk, 1,177 dead. Oklahoma, capsized, 429 dead. West Virginia, sunk, 106 dead. California, sunk, 100 dead. Nevada, beached, heavily damaged, 60 dead. Tennessee, damaged, trapped by burning oil. Maryland, damaged, for dead. Pennsylvania, lightly damaged in dry dock. Over 180 aircraft lost, most destroyed on the ground before they could ever fight. 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and other ships damaged or sunk. More than 2,400 Americans dead. Fathers, sons, brothers, and friends. Another 1,178 wounded. Pearl Harbor is a graveyard of twisted steel and shattered dreams. Rescue operations begin immediately. Men work frantically to save those trapped in capsized or sinking ships, cutting through steel with torches, prying open hatches, pulling survivors from flooded compartments. On Oklahoma, rescuers hear tapping from inside the hull. 32 men are cut out alive over the next 2 days. Fires burn for days. Oil slicks coat the harbor. Bodies float in the water, are pulled from wreckage, are buried in mass graves. The smell, smoke, fuel, and death hangs over the island. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Doctors and nurses work around the clock, treating burns, shrapnel wounds, crush injuries. Civilians pitch in, opening their homes, donating blood, providing food and comfort. But the Japanese planners miscalculated one thing. Actually, several things. First, and most critically, the American aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor. USS Enterprise was returning from delivering aircraft to Wake Island. USS Lexington was ferrying planes to Midway. USS Saratoga was undergoing maintenance in San Diego. The carriers, the most valuable ships in the fleet, were all elsewhere. Pure chance. Admiral Nagumo, the Japanese commander, considered searching for the carriers or launching a third wave to destroy Pearl Harbor's fuel storage and repair facilities. His staff debated. Some urged a third strike. The fuel tanks, the dry docks, the submarine base, all were intact. Destroying them would have crippled Pearl Harbor for years. But Nagumo decided against it. He had achieved surprise. His planes had suffered losses. American defenses were now alert. The carriers were somewhere out there, unseen. He ordered the fleet to withdraw. It was a fateful decision. The fuel tanks, holding 4.5 million barrels of oil, remained intact. Without them, the Pacific Fleet would have had to retreat to the west coast. The submarine base was untouched. American submarines would go on to devastate Japanese shipping. The repair facilities survived. Ships like California, West Virginia, and Nevada would be raised, repaired, and returned to service, some fighting at the war's end. And most importantly, the carriers survived. In 6 months, at Midway, those carriers would shatter Japan's naval dominance forever. But the Japanese miscalculated something else, something far more profound. They believed America would be paralyzed by fear, that the United States would accept defeat, negotiate, or retreat from the Pacific. Instead, they awakened something far more powerful. Within hours, the American nation united in a way it had never done before. Before Pearl Harbor, America was deeply divided. Isolationists argued against involvement in foreign wars. Many believed Europe's problems were not America's concern. Pearl Harbor changed everything. Grief turned to determination, shock turned to fury, and isolation turned into action. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling December 7th a date which will live in infamy. His speech, broadcast across the nation, was brief but powerful. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. With one voice, the nation declared war on Japan. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only one member of Congress voted against it, Representative Jeannette Rankin, a pacifist. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. America was now fully committed to World War II. Factories roared to life. The arsenal of democracy, America's industrial might, shifted to wartime production. Car factories built tanks and aircraft. Shipyards launched vessels at an unprecedented rate. By war's end, America would produce more war material than all other nations combined.
Millions enlisted.
Recruiting stations were overwhelmed. Men lined up for blocks eager to serve. Women joined the WACs, the Waves, the Women's Air Force Service pilots. The entire nation mobilized with a single purpose, to fight and to win. The sleeping giant had awoken, and the war that Japan thought it could win quickly would become one of the most devastating struggles the world had ever seen. Pearl Harbor was not the end. It was the beginning. The road ahead would be long, bloody, and brutal. The Philippines would fall. Bataan, Corregidor, Wake Island, Guam. In the months after Pearl Harbor, Japan seemed unstoppable. But at Midway in June 1942, the tide turned. For Japanese carriers, veterans of Pearl Harbor, sank in flames. Then came Guadalcanal, a 6-month hell in the Solomon Islands. America's first offensive, fought on land, sea, and air. Then the island-hopping campaign. Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, each one bought with American blood. The Philippines were retaken. MacArthur kept his promise. I shall return. American submarines strangled Japan's economy, sinking merchant ships by the hundreds. American bombers incinerated Japanese cities. Tokyo, Osaka, over 60 cities firebombed. And finally, in August 1945, 2 atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, brought the war to its terrible conclusion. On September 2, 1945, aboard the battleship USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay, Japan signed the instrument of surrender. The moment that transformed America from a distant observer into a relentless force, a force that would push across the Pacific, island by island, until the war ended in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Among those present was Admiral Chester Nimitz, who had rebuilt the Pacific Fleet from the ashes of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was the spark that lit the fire, a fire that would burn until victory was won. Today, the USS Arizona Memorial stands above the sunken battleship, a place of pilgrimage and remembrance. Over 2 million people visit each year, paying respects to the 1,177 men still entombed below. Oil still seeps from Arizona's ruptured tanks, the black tears, a reminder that she still bleeds, even after 80 years. Survivors of Pearl Harbor, now in their late 90s and beyond, return each December 7th to honor their fallen comrades. Their numbers dwindle each year, but the memory endures. Pearl Harbor reminds us of the cost of unpreparedness, of the value of vigilance, of the price of freedom. It reminds us that a nation can be shaken but not broken, that from the ashes of defeat, determination can rise, that even in the darkest hour, courage endures. The men who died at Pearl Harbor did not die in vain. Their sacrifice united a nation. Their memory inspired millions to serve, and their legacy is the free world we live in today. December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, a day of shock, grief, and loss, but also a day that proved the strength of the American spirit, a day that awoke a giant. We remember, we honor, we will never forget. Pearl Harbor, the day everything changed, the day America went to war, and the day that proved that even from destruction, a nation can rise stronger than before.